Hey guys, John here. Go on and do us a big favor and everything. Go on and check out our audio only podcast where you guys get your podcast from. Also, too, I also have Alex and Shay here. Shay just wrote a brand new book, and that's why she's here because I'm going to be interviewing her. But I just want to say this: I read the first chapter, and I absolutely loved it. So go on ahead, go over there, click the link below, go over to the Kindle of where you guys get your books, and read it. And without further ado, let's go on ahead and get on with the show. Hey, Alex.
Oh, hey, John. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, man. How about you?
I'm turned up. I'm excited for this interview right now.
Actually, I'm interviewing your wife.
Oh, that explains
Yeah.
why her name's here.
Exactly, man. Exactly. But hey, I do love the fact that you're supporting your wife. That's always great, man. I do appreciate the love and support that you're showing her. Which, by the way, he should get a ranking of 10 right now for doing that.
I've
But
been ranking of 10. No.
But anyways, Shay, welcome to the show. I do appreciate you talking about your book, taking the time out of your night to talk about this, or day since you're on Pacific time.
We do still have some daylight. Yes, no, thank you so much. This is really exciting to be a part of an interview, and I'm excited to talk about the book.
I'm excited as well. And what can people expect from this book? What is the plot line that you can actually best describe it?
Yeah, so it's a young adult novel, which really just means that the protagonist is young adult, but that means themes can be applicable to young adults all the way up through adults, kind of like if you think about Harry Potter, that had a very wide reading and enjoyment. Not to say my book is Harry Potter, but just in that young adult genre, I've had questions get asked about, I'm not a young adult. I'm not 16 or I'm not, 12. Can I still read this book and enjoy it? Absolutely, you can. And the tagline is that Dance With Me is about the everyday phantoms, absent parents, unrequited love, and words unspoken, and how Charlie uses books and prose to come to terms with them. So throughout the novel, she actually reads over 20 books, and she ends up having a conversation with one of her peers using only the lines from books. So if you're a reader, you will really enjoy the puzzle of finding out which book she's reading and quoting, or you'll maybe add some of these books to your to-be-read pile in the future.
That's awesome, though, because here's the thing. What I really loved about Charlie was her escapism when it comes down to reading. And you get the first instant, especially when her friend just comes over there, bombards her whenever he wants to go. He's like the party type. Yeah. Right? And
Scott is the party animal. Absolutely.
Right. Scott is this party animal. And basically you have Charlie who's like, no, I just want to go on ahead. I want to enjoy my books. Yeah. You do you, I do me, and have fun.
Yeah.
But I like how her world is like kind of turned upside down in a sense when she winds up meeting what I think from reading the first chapter is basically the love interest into her life. With the slip and slide. The slip and slide thing, I thought it was actually pretty fun because how many of us actually do that at parties? And here's the thing. I told Alex this, and the thing that I loved about your book is the fact that it's not too wordy. Because don't get me wrong, I love Stephen King, but he can be too wordy.
No, come on. We don't need 1,400 pages.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Release the Robinson cut, 1,400 pages.
Exactly. But the thing that I love about it is how easy it is to read and how easy it is to actually digest it. And if anybody is wondering, this is actually so easy to read, so easy to comprehend to the point where you don't have to reread something over and over again to actually get it. And this is actually a laid back kind of story if you're just wanting to chill on a hot summer day in the sun. And I get that kind of vibe from this.
Cool. Yeah. Add it to your summer beach read. Love it. No, but I think going back to the young adult genre, I think it lends itself to that. I do think adult fiction can be wordier, can be more verbose, can be like, wait, what did they just say? Let me read that again. But with young adult, you get to just fall into the story and enjoy the characters and the plot without having to struggle too much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I've read like R.L. Stine and stuff like that. Even he can be a little wordy as well for Fear Street novels and things like that.
Totally.
With this, it's so much easy, and I love it. And I like how you explain what the party scene is like, how Scott goes over to how you actually explain the Super Mario Kart, Bash Brothers thing. Then you go over to this other scenario at the party, and I actually feel like I'm in this party with Charlie, and that's something that I absolutely love.
That's so.
So yeah.
Didn't mean to cut you off.
Go on ahead.
I was just gonna say that's something I really worked on, because this is actually like the 13th or 14th version of this story. I've written that many different drafts, trying to get closer and closer to what is the story I'm trying to tell? How do I make it so that readers enjoy the telling of the story? And one thing as a reader that I don't like is when the setting descriptions go on and on and on. I'm like, I get it. It's a green couch. Like, let's go. Tell me, why is this important? So I really want to just like get you in the scene and then have you be part of the action and get you out. So there are some things like Super Smash Bros. I'm not a video game player, but I've been around tournaments and things with people playing. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a vibe. So I really wanted to put people in with that. Beer bong, that's classic. And then I wanted to add something a little bit new and refreshing with the slip and slide. So for those of you who haven't read it, it's a party game where you have a cup of beer and you have to slide on the slip and slide and end with your beer full, and then you swap with an opponent. So it just brings that like fun element. And I think it brings that like kid-like energy too, trying to keep them young so we don't have, 30-year-olds who are playing 15-year-olds,
Exactly. And speaking of that, though, my question is this. If you were to adapt this into a movie, if someone said, like, Spielberg or Martin Scorsese or somewhere along those lines, or listen to John Hughes. There'll be a lot of F-bombs going on over there to the point.
Robert De
Niro. How old are you, sir? I'm 15. Your contract says 70 and getting older. But yeah, who would you cast for the lead role of Charlie? Who would actually be Scott? Who would be your director? Who would be your go-to?
Yeah. So I thought about this for a while because the shows I grew up on in terms of TV were like Lizzie McGuire and That's So Raven, and they are way too old at this point. So I was trying to think of what are shows right now with kids that are really popular, and the one that came to mind was Stranger Things, of course. So Millie Bobby Brown is great. I think she'd be really cool. I really like Shailene Woodley. I like her quirkiness. So I think she'd make a good Charlie. She's obviously too old, but if we made her 16 again, I think she'd be good. In Stranger Things, in season 2, who's the new like hot guy that out moves over Steve?
Billy.
I think he'd be a good Scott, right? He's like the bad boy and he's really attractive, and but that like something's kind of off about him, and so you're learning like, okay, what is it exactly? In terms of director, I'm in love with Jordan Peele, which is not the vibe of this story, but he would be a great director. And then, I would obviously want to be the screenwriter. I would want to try to adapt the story, because that's one of my grudges is people who don't take the source material seriously and think like, oh, I have the title and I have the main characters' names, but then I'm just going to run with it. It's like, no, I really want this story to be told, So I think I would like to try my hand at adapting the film.
That'd be very interesting, to be honest with you. And what I want to say is this: I can picture the camera angle with Charlie with when she goes into the whole entire party aspect of just focusing from behind, and then a wide angle shot.
Yeah,
right. Like you're actually following her in with this party scene, and I can actually see Here's the thing: I feel like a director right now. But I can see it.
Writing
but here's
all the notes down.
Right? Exactly. Take notes, by the way. But here's what I can picture, though. You're following her into this party scene, and there's long angle shot. To the left, you see the Mario Bash Brothers, the Bash Brothers stuff. Then over to the right, you see Scott going through the sliding door. And you can actually see the slip and slide, a little bit of the yellow of the slip and slide. Of where that's being taken place. I can see this whole entire thing being a smoky room, of course, drinking, anything that the adolescents do. So I can definitely see it. I can definitely see it in my mind, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I can picture it too. And actually, I did write a short story version that was a screenplay. So it was like a stage production.
Nice.
Because I do enjoy writing in different formats. And so, and I love these characters. And so I've written different versions of them.
Nice. And my question is this: what was your writing process when you're writing this? And how did you come up with the characters for Scott and, of course, Charlie? How did you come up with the idea for them?
Yeah, so it actually started as a short story that I wrote starting in 8th grade and then finishing in high school. And the short story won the contest at my high school and actually won a contest in town as well. And so I just started to get some feedback like, the short story is great, but it's only 8 to 10 pages. I want something more full length. I want to really get to know these characters. And so I thought, okay, let me see. And so I just started writing it. I finished the first version in 2011. And that first draft was 400,000 words, which, as we were saying, is like a very long novel. This one is closer to closer to like 60,000, which is right in the middle of your typical young adult novel. So that first draft was just like me word vomiting onto the page, all these ideas. And then you start to cut back and, sort through the weeds and go, okay, who is Charlie and what story am I trying to tell? That first draft was all based on real characters from real people from my life. These characters were based almost like pulled from my life. Was me just trying to process like events that were happening, whether traumatic or just, bullies at school or whatever it might be. That is pretty typical for a high school student. And then over time, I learned how to let them be their own characters and not let them be stuck into what I wish this one person in my life had done. So right. That was really rich source material for me to pull from. It's how I base all of my characters, actually, is I pull them from who do I know who talks like that? Who do I know who walks like that? Who do I know who's really into this specific thing? And then from there, I can build out the character and let them become their own person and actually be a part of the story. So yeah, it's just been a lot of work since for the last 12 years, trying to find the right story and let the characters be themselves and doing a ton of character development. Charlie obviously went through the most character development, but so did Scott, as her best friend and love interest. So did her, the queen bee. Her name is Rebecca. In the first chapter, you get like a hint that something used to be there. And you learn later on that they used to be really good friends, but had a falling out. And so a lot of work on her character arc. Charlie has a little brother named Danny, and he's 5, but he probably might be more like 7. So it's always interesting to talk to parents who have kids that age and go, yeah, I do remember like how young that child is, or maybe his sentence structure is a little bit older, so getting feedback there. But yeah, just like working and trying to really make sure the characters felt real. Cause that's another like pet peeve of mine as a reader is when characters are just built off of stereotypes. And you're like, okay, but that's not actually who this person is like. And like, I wouldn't be friends with this person, like how many times have you read a protagonist? It's super annoying. You're like, okay, right. But they would not have done that. So I wanted Charlie to be annoying because teenagers are like, we go through things that in teenagerdom where you're like, okay, I'm supposed to make that mistake because that's how you learn and that's how you grow up. But I still wanted them to be likable and relatable as well.
That's one thing I have to say, though, is very much realism in this and how realistic it actually is. And that's what I love about it, is the fact that in the first chapter, you actually get a sense of ability of what you're trying to create within this universe that you made.
Cool.
And I have to say, I'm going to be reading some more of this after we get off here, because I'm just that much... Here's the thing. It's been hard for me to actually focus on a book. The last book I actually the last book I actually read was actually an indie writer that I had on the show. That was last year. And it's been hard for me to focus primarily on a book. With your book, it's helping me to actually focus on reading again and my love for reading. So that's something.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that.
You're very welcome. Because I'm going to be honest with you, you're very talented at what you're doing. I'm excited to see where this book actually lands you. And I'm excited for the right, because I can actually feel it. I can feel the energy from the pages and also your passion with it. I know that you have a great person that's supporting you, that's sitting next to you. And, I can imagine him just reading this book and being wowed by it and be like, look, this is actually something special. You need to go out there and
give
it 100%.
I was promising myself, like, all right, I'm going to read this and I won't cry because she's really good at making you cry. And I'm like,
I remember your romantic movie that she made you watch.
Yeah, gets me every time. So I got like 30 pages into the book and I'm like, I'm hanging in there. And then page 31, bang, I started crying. I don't know if it was exactly page 31.
Do you remember the scene? Or do you remember which scenes like really just, you felt emotionally connected with the most?
Felt emotionally, definitely when when Charlie's talking about the death of her father with her mom and they're just having a heart-to-heart moment. And I was like, oh, there it goes.
There goes the fireworks.
Right. They're gone. Just let him out. But it just watching you on this journey. I know you've been working on it since we were in college. You were working on it before we even met. And the process of writing a book is very challenging, like I assume. And what would you say, what advice would you give to other potential writers? Like, what things would you like tell them to keep an eye out for? Because I know there was a lot of things that when you were working on the book that you didn't even think of being an issue, like self-publishing, for example. Like, so what advice would you give up and coming writers?
I would say the number one thing I hear when people tell me, or when I tell people that I'm a writer, that I finished a book, I meet a lot of people who say, oh, me too. Like, I always wanted to finish the book. I'm in the middle of one, but I just wasn't able to finish it, or I could never do that. Writing a book is so hard. And I think there's a couple reasons why it feels like so much work. I mean, it is so much work. And when you're a writer, you just keep making it happen until it's done. But it also takes a lot of confidence and a lot of belief in yourself. And I think it's super normal to have these cycles where you're like, okay, I'm not a good writer. I'm just going to give up, or at least I'm going to pause for now, and then let yourself sort of find your way back to the love of writing. I've gone through that cycle multiple times, right? We all have to go through rejections when you're pitching your, whether it's a novel and you're trying to get it traditionally published, or just pitching a short story to a local contest. So just knowing that, like, you are a writer if you want to write, like, you get to claim that title. You don't have to be published to claim that title. And you do have something to say. So keep going, and just, you have to be able to dig down and find that belief in yourself, and not to compare yourself to a published book, because it's really easy when you're in draft 1 or 6 or wherever you might be in your editing process to say, like, oh, like, Stephen King, such a prolific author, such a great, writer. He's got some sentences where you're like, how did he come up with that? So good. But, you didn't see his first draft. Like, we all go through these really awful first drafts. And then that's really the big one, is you're supposed to write really, really awful first drafts, because you can't edit a blank page. So just get that awful first draft done, write it, don't use your editor brain, and then later you can come back and fix it. But yeah, so it's a lot of pieces, a lot of learning. But I think it's just that, like, belief in self and being willing to continue trudging.
Exactly. And here's the thing, though. Even with me doing the podcast and stuff like that, and that can actually be challenging, though, too, because of the fact that you're looking for sponsors and you have to pitch. The hardest thing is to pitch your own show. And I'm like, well, what the heck do I do? I'm a podcaster. No, that's not everything that you have to say. So I understand. I mean, it's very challenging to have to try and pitch something, and hopefully somebody crosses your fingers and toes that they like it and stuff like that. And then, like, oh, you know what? This draft is good, but guess what? It could be better. So therefore, you have to go back and try to do it again. And, I feel like, every author should go ahead and at least try to reread what you wrote and go through your draft. Because I wrote a screenplay before. I'm like, you know what? This would work if I did this, or this could work if I did that. So I can understand your first draft is not always going to be the one that you turn in. It might be the 4th or 5th one.
It will not. But to your point, whether your thing is podcast and my thing is writing, or yours is the movie review channel and podcast. But it takes grit, right? And it takes, like, I have this creative side of me, but I also have to marry it with the business side. Like, okay, I really do have to put myself out there because I genuinely believe in this product, and I think other people will also enjoy it. And so I think if you stay genuine with that, it becomes less of a sales pitch, and people think, I'm not interested, and they want to hear more. Like you saying, the passion shines through. Well, why do I want to watch their channel? Or why do I want to listen to the podcast and hear about this movie? Why do I want to read the book?
Exactly. And I feel like you do that within the first setup of the book on why you should read it.
It took so much work to get there, so I'm glad to hear you say that.
You're very welcome. And guess what? I also like your movie references to, like, Jumanji and stuff like that too. I'm like, okay, this girl is actually someone that I would actually hang out with. Cool. Because I'm like, okay, she likes movies, she likes books, check marks all the way across the board. I would definitely be hanging around with Charlie. Because,
since we're talking about reading and movie watching, she's also really into music. And so something that is fun about this book is that there is a Spotify playlist that is designed to have you listen to it as you go. So each chapter has its specific songs. And so you press play. It's free on Spotify. It's linked through the book and through the Kindle, the electronic version. And then obviously I had to guess what the reading pacing was. So you might be a little ahead or a little behind the songs, but at least they're organized by chapters. So you can always catch yourself up as you go. But it does help set the stage and probably helps you visualize it as a movie even more.
Right. So, okay. So I noticed the track list. You have Nas on there. You also have Mary J. Blige. Man, you have some great hip hop taste. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
And
all the greats.
So my question is this: for that party scene, what song was actually in there?
I think at that point is Everybody Y'all. So it's with Nate Dogg and Eve, and it's a blend of different people. Also a great song. Yeah, well, Charlie's a hip hop dancer. So that's some of the research I had to do is really get a better idea of, who would she have been raised with in this scene? If she'd been dancing her whole life, who would she have danced to? Who would be her idols? And really make sure it wasn't just like, oh, here's this random white person, listing off random hip hop artists, right? Like I wanted to make it meaningful. And also I wanted to it goes back to the 90s and early 2000s because that's like when some of the greatest hip hop existed. So
definitely amen to that. Because I definitely listened to some great hip hop back in those days though too. I mean, you had Nas, you had Mary J. Blige doing her thing. And to be honest with you, hip hop music is a great place to actually put your book when you're looking at that character Charlie. I'm just gonna be honest here. And I can imagine her just listening to these artists and being geeked out over while also reading books though too. I mean, it could actually placement for when she reads her books and stuff. So that's kudos for you for thinking about doing a playlist, because I never seen where an author will actually say, you know what, I want to go in and expand this a little bit more, and I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to make a playlist out of this. And I think that's actually pretty cool because everybody nowadays has a playlist that they can actually enjoy. And that's great that you can actually interact and feel like that you're with Charlie versus just reading the chapter and closing the book. You can always go ahead, go over to Spotify and feel like you're on that journey with her.
Yeah, so exactly. And maybe if I mentioned a song, you wouldn't know what that is. So I'm also introducing you to some really cool artists. So where that started was I'm always listening to music. I'm just the type of person who needs music in my life. And so certain characters when are associated with certain songs. And so that's where it started with like, okay, when characters are on the scene, what song is playing? And then it sort of just developed into like certain scenes. And then of course, if she's a dancer, I was building out the playlist of her showcases and different things too. But yeah, it's definitely it's a multimedia experience. And then it's also set locally in Sacramento. And so I also have it linked to a Google map. And so if you ever visit Sac, then you can actually like move through the book with Charlie and then find the map and visit all her places, the local coffee shops and bakeries and restaurants and parks and just different things, and actually get to literally explore her world.
I like that idea because it gives you a sensibility of who this character is, where she comes from, and go on this, like you said, this journey with her. But I like the fact that you're actually throwing in places that you went to, and people can actually go there if they wanted to and picture Charlie being over there, like maybe at a pizzeria or coffee shops or stuff like that. That's actually really cool and original. I like the authenticness of this.
Thank you. Yeah, and we had to test it out because I wasn't going to put something in my book that wasn't good. So I was like, okay, do we choose this place or this place? What's real?
That research was the most fun because that meant we got to go to a bunch of delicious restaurants like Fixin's. That is our favorite place right now, but it's very expensive.
But it was like, oh, it's for my book research. I guess we have to.
Darn, gotta spend the money. Maybe we gotta do the research.
Yeah,
I like that though.
I had a kind of a tricky question for you. So out of all the characters, excluding Charlie, which one of them do you connect with the most? That's not Charlie, would you say?
honestly probably Scott, which is why I'm so sensitive because everyone hates him. They go back and forth between hating Scott and Charlie, or it's not Charlie, sorry, Scott and Amy, because of the way that they aren't respecting Charlie at various points in the book. But I think that's where I was able to work through a lot of like the trauma or grief of my upbringing. And I think that is relatable and real. People who use their defense mechanisms and react against people that they love the most versus identifying like, oh, why am I in pain and why am I suffering right now? And so rather than asking for help, they just like shut down. And then what are our coping mechanisms?
Mhm.
And so I think that really plays itself out in Scott the most. You see it with Charlie for sure. And you definitely see it with Amy. You see it with Rebecca, but you see it really with Scott the most, I think. And I think that's why people don't like him.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have guessed that in
Yeah.
a million years.
Most people love Jared and love Danny because
Uh,
they're adorable and they're two-dimensional characters. You don't get to see their character growth because not every character in a book can be dynamic, right? You have to give some space for the reader to like really pay attention to Charlie, and then these other characters help fill her world. But yeah.
I like that though. I like how you drop like little seeds for each character and let the character be who they are versus
Yeah.
overshadowing them with other characters and trying to get those arcs to those characters. Because
Something I learned
right.
in this journey is, you don't want your characters to fall flat, but some of them actually do have to be flat characters to allow the story to rise. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think that's everything that I had wanted to cover. Alex, is there anything else that you want to ask?
Yes. What are you working on next? I would love for you to talk about that, or what's something you kind of have planned.
So I have a couple of things in the works. One of them is a short story collection. So if you're not ready to spend $2.99 for the ebook or $7.99 for the physical copy of Dance With Me, I'm going to be releasing a short story collection of 3 stories for 99 cents. So it gives you just an easy taste for $1. And those are just, like anywhere from 5 to 10 pages. And it just shows more of my range in terms of my writing ability. If you're like, oh, I'm not really into young adult, then you get some other stories to read. And then for my next book, it's actually a zombie dystopic novel, 2 of them that I have written. I wrote them in 2020. So it's time for me to go back and do the second drafts of those. But those will be cool because if you really like the first one, then you already have a second one that you don't have to wait for.
Well, you had me at zombie, so
Yeah.
I'm definitely
Yes.
so I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. But Shea, I just want to say it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Alex, it's always a pleasure to have you on, no matter what. So just want to let you know. But Shea, I believe in you. I believe in your work. I believe that you're gonna shine through all this and everything. And I can't wait to have you on again because I really do. I would like to actually have you on more and to be able to not even just do an interview, but maybe do a review or something, stuff like that. But you're always welcome on the show as well. So I just want to point that out there.
Yeah, if you ever review movies that were books, that's where my specialty is. So would love to do that. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was fun to talk about the book and also get some questions I haven't gotten before. And then get to
well, I do have one more.
Yeah.
I want to throw a curveball at you, but this is going to be a fun one.
Okay.
What spirit animal would you say you are?
Oh, me specifically?
Yeah.
Did we ever decide this? I don't think so. The one that's coming to mind is a ladybug.
Okay.
Because everyone's happy with ladybugs. No one wants to harm them. And I think that mostly my personality is like bubbly and something you want to be around.
Mm-hmm.
I love the sunshine, and I feel like you mostly see ladybugs in the sun. I'm also an agricultural major, and ladybugs are really good for the ecosystem. I don't know what their lifespan is, but bugs are pretty short. So I don't know if that was the right one to choose. But what about you, John?
For me, I'm going to have to go with a dog. Because simple fact is, I'm not going to say like I am a dog or anything like that. But basically, that's the fact that I'm loyal to my friends. I'm loyal to my family. I put them first before I put my own needs in and stuff like that too. So that's why I chose my spirit animal as a dog, because of the fact that I'm just loyal.
I was gonna say dog too, but specifically a beagle. I picture myself as a beagle.
A collie.
I just felt it in my soul. I was like, beagle, Alex. I'm like, oh yeah, because they like to run and they want everyone to play with them, right? Like, so that's basically me.
Exactly. And to quote Step Brothers, did we just become best friends?
High five.
High five. Right. So, anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this interview. But I have a little trailer reaction that Charlie and I did. Not from her book, not from Shea's book, but Charlie from the. So, I do have a trailer reaction dropping tomorrow. Then, of course, Alex will be back on the show tomorrow night at the same time at 6 o'clock Pacific time to talk about Thor: Love and Thunder. And I'm excited to see it. I'm kind of nervous to see it, but I can't wait to actually see the movie so I can judge it for my own self. Then Wednesday night, I have Miss Marvel that I'm reviewing with conversation about ... podcast with Will. That's going to be, of course, at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time for that. Then Thursday is going to be a rest day for me, kind of, but I'm going to be on another podcast. And then Friday, I'm resting. So that's everything that we're going to be doing here at Movie Lovers Tonight. I hope that everyone has a great and safe night, and I'll see you guys back here tomorrow night. And